You share the planet with over 7 billion people. So it's no surprise that there are plenty out there with the worst of intentions. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Davis as we touch on the horrors from these less than savory characters. I am a Christian. I am a member in our church choir, and I was around 10 or 11 when this happened. In our church every Sunday morning, we have breakfast in the church quarters. It has a beautiful ocean view. The dining hall is on the front, and on the left-hand side are the priest rooms and rooms for the other church people. Our meals were always prepared by this one cook. He was a great guy, or at least that's what I thought back then. His name was Al, and back then he was in his late 30s or early 40s. The thing with Al was that everyone thought he was gay, or at least he pretended to be gay. The way he spoke, the way his mannerisms were, they all indicated that he was quite feminine, so no one suspected him in any way. One day, there was a fiesta in our neighborhood, so people were everywhere. I enjoyed biking around the area, and today was one of the days where I found myself doing just that, and I was wandering around the backside of the church, and there he was. I was sitting in a chair watching me. He called me to come inside the church quarters. He was all alone, and it didn't ring any alarm bells in my head because we never had any stranger danger classes here, and because I just thought he was a nice guy. Not to mention that nothing bad has ever happened here. He invited me in, and I was led to his room. I don't remember how or why I was inside, as this was 10 years ago, but what he did next is something I will never forget. He locked the door. I was scared, and his happy tone then changed to a quite sinister one. He walked towards me slowly, like a predator making its way towards its prey. He laid me in bed and touched my 10-year-old thigh up and down. I was starting to cry now, and I told him that I just wanted to go home as I didn't understand why he was touching me in this way. He asked me how much it would take to kiss me. Silent tears streamed down my face, and silent pleas to let me out. He did. He opened the door and we left. He sat me on the top of his lap for about 30 minutes, just nuzzling my ears, on that chair for his entertainment. And then he let me go. Needless to say, I never went back to church. I really regret never telling my parents about it. I can't believe how stupid I was back then. A few years later, I was informed that he died in his sleep. At least he will never harm another girl's life again.
I am currently a 26-year-old female. This story takes place when I was in my early teens. I was home alone once again. The time was night. My parents really got into the party scene before their separation, so the story takes place before the others. Anyway, I was in our basement on our desktop. Yeah, this was before laptops and iPhones. I was chatting with my friends on AOL and listening to music. It was getting late, not a lot of people were on, so I decided to head up to bed. Now, to paint a picture of my house. Where I was sitting, I would have been facing the front of my house. There's a window to my back that leads out into our back porch. The porch is a 3-level one. The ground level, the pool level, which is where the window sits perfectly, and finally the top level that leads to the door to our kitchen. I slowly made my way to the basement stairs and climbed up them half asleep. I was nearing the top when I heard someone sprinting up the stairs to the top level of our back porch. I froze in fear at the top of the stairs. I love horror movies and always yell at the actors when they go to investigate a noise, so what did I do? Became those stupid actors in the movies. I slowly turned the corner to go into my kitchen and was facing the door that led to the porch. The door had a decent sized window on it. The lights were on in the kitchen, so whoever was out there could see me, but I could not see them. I began moving towards the door. I got halfway when I heard footsteps sprinting down the stairs. Without thinking, I ran to the door, thrusted it open while turning on the back porch light. Nothing. Whomever had been out there was able to get away before I had a chance to see them. I had been at that desktop for a long time that night, so who knows how long this sicko watched me. Whoever you are, I don't think I'd want to meet you, although I still want to know who you are. 1. I was babysit by a neighbor who had a daughter in the same grade as me. Her and I had become good friends and had sleepovers when we were little. By the time of this story, I was just old enough to stay home by myself and no longer needed to be babysat. My friend's mom was the one who mainly had babysat me, and I liked her, but my friend's dad was kind of weird and annoyed me. He would always pick on me and was just plain creepy. I was glad to finally be able to stay at home and be away from him, but his daughter and I were still good friends, and our parents were good friends as well. One day I'd gotten home after school and was home alone. I realized that my friend had borrowed my one book that I needed for a class assignment. She only lived in the next neighborhood over, so I called over to her house. This was before cell phones were really popular. My friend's dad answered, and I asked to speak with my friend, but he said that she wasn't home. I asked if my book was over there, and he said that he'd seen it downstairs. I asked if I could walk over and get the book. He agreed, and I hung up and began my journey over there. When I got there, I went around to the back door like I normally always did. I walked in and yelled out that I was here for my book. It was very quiet. I saw my book on the table and went to retrieve it. That's when my friend's dad came out from where the washer and dryer were, completely naked. I was shocked. He reacted as though I'd caught him off guard, and I just left after that. I thought at the time maybe he didn't hear me. Later, I realized that he planned it. I mean, I had called him to tell him I was coming over. I yelled when I got there. I'm just glad nothing else happened. Yet. 2. So a few years after this incident happened, I had another scare with my friend's dad. I was around 14. I had been home alone all day. It must have been a holiday or something because it was during the school year, but I had the day off. My dad was at work and my parents had recently separated, so my mom had moved out. I was in the kitchen and was being a nerd by playing Sudoku. It was nice outside, but I hated going out there alone. I was startled by someone opening up our downstairs door. I heard someone yell to me. Realizing it was my friend's dad, I went to the stairs leading to our downstairs. There's no door for the stairs. My dad had built them in the middle of the house, so we wouldn't have to go out into the garage to get down to the basement. My friend's dad was standing there. "Hey, I didn't want to scare you. I just came over to try out the new hot tub. Your dad said I could get in whenever." It was true. We had just gotten a new hot tub, so I didn't think it was all that weird. I just said, okay, and returned to playing my Sudoku game. A little while later, I hear him yell for me again. "Heather, could you get me a towel? I dropped mine in the hot tub." I, of course, said yes and got up to go get the towel. As I passed the stairs to get to the bathroom, I saw him out of the corner of my eye. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, but continued to the bathroom without hesitation. As I opened the closet door, it blocked the door that led into the bathroom, a stupid constructed flaw. Now, as I closed the closet door, there he stood. I hadn't even heard him walk up, and again, he was completely naked. I freaked out. I half threw the towel at him at the same time and moved around him to get out of the bathroom and back into my place in the kitchen. I just resumed playing Sudoku and not knowing what else to do. This grown man was in my house, the place I thought I'd be safest. He walked over to me with a towel on, thankfully. He started asking me about my game and wanted me to explain how it worked. I gave him short, quick answers. My mind was racing with fear. He then turned the conversation to how it was okay that I saw him and trying to make the situation sound like it was perfectly normal. I barely spoke to him and never once looked at him the entire time he talked. I think he finally saw how terrified I was, and finally he left. The moment he was out the door, I picked up the phone and called my then boyfriend. I told him everything that happened and how freaked out I was. Then I saw my friend's dad's car drive back to the backside of my house. He came to the door again. I reluctantly answered, and he immediately saw the phone in my hand. He stated that he left something out back and was just coming to get it. I said okay and shut the door. Today I wonder if he was coming back to finish what he had started. When my dad returned home that day, I told him everything that had happened. He was enraged and went outside to call my friend's dad. I didn't get to hear anything he said, but he told me that my friend's dad was no longer allowed near me or the house. He also asked if I wanted to press charges, but I stupidly rejected. Looking back, I wish I would have pressed charges then and there. 3. So after I told my dad about what had happened, he went around the neighborhood to the families with kids that were my age and that used to be babysat by my friend's mom. He was warning them of what happened. A little while later, a friend of mine a few houses down, we'll call Kay, came down to tell me that she had the experience with the same guy. Kay had been home alone one night when he showed up half drunk to her house. He was talking with her and explained that he was out for a walk. Weird because it was really late at night. This was before he had ruined my childhood forever, so she was unaware of his intentions. As they were talking, he came up behind her and started rubbing her shoulders. He was also pretty much right up against her. She was freaking out on the inside and didn't know much about how to get away from him. Luckily, since he'd been drinking so much, he asked to use the restroom. As he went to the restroom, she called her neighbor to come over. Even though it was late at night, the neighbor knew something was wrong and came right over. When the guy came out of the restroom, he saw that Kay and her neighbor were talking in the living room. The other person, who was a male, must have alarmed the guy, so he thanked her for letting him use the restroom and he left. She too told her parents. Her parents were upset, and although it freaked her out, it wasn't something they could really report. My friendship ended with this guy's daughter after these incidents. Kay and I do wonder if he might have ever tried anything with his own daughter. The fact that he seemed to try with us and that she never once had a single boyfriend or girlfriend growing up, and she seemed to be more of a loner, but that could also be due to what her father had done to us. I do feel bad that I stopped talking to her, but I'm still terrified of him today. I went on to major in criminal justice, and through some classes realized that he was showing signs of starting to groom me to be his victim. I guess he never thought I'd tell since I was a very shy and quiet girl.
When I was 17, I moved out of my parents' house and began working as a carny. This required me to use my pickup to tow things around the country. One night, I was heading back to South Carolina and had stopped in Kentucky at a truck stop to use the restroom and to get a snack. It was around about 1 a.m. I parked on the side of the building, went inside, and I always got super sketched out stopping at night, just because I was a 17-year-old girl. As I was walking out, I heard, "Hey baby, damn, where you going?" He kept saying things like that until I was out of view. It was a tall, skinny dude walking out of the store behind me. I hustled to my truck and locked myself in. Now that should have been enough to get me out of there immediately. But being tired, I decided to sift through my phone before heading out again. 10 minutes passed after the catcalls, and I see the same man emerge from a dumpster near where the semis park. A car pulled up next to the dumpster just as he walked out, and what I saw next made my head spin. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. The back door of the car opened, and a little girl, maybe around 12 years old, got out. They were obviously not related, and she was panicking. He grabbed her by the hand, walked back behind the dumpster and towards the semis. Then the car took off. I was shaking so badly, but I managed to find out where I was and I called the sheriff. He met me after 10 minutes and I told him exactly what I'd seen. However, he didn't seem too surprised. He said they'd look over the surveillance tapes, and I made sure to include how exactly he catcalled me, so that they could know exactly which guy I was talking about. I left, and have no idea whatever came of it. The guy was probably long gone with the girl before the sheriff met me, but maybe, just maybe, I saved her from a life of being a sex slave. So child molester trucker, let's never, ever meet again.
As a teenager back on a balmy August in 1986, I lived by a cemetery called Rose Hill. This is a very beautiful cemetery and much smaller back then. The land near the east end was prairie back in 1986. Our house was directly across from the last northeast gate. Here's my old house, and if you spin it around, you'll see the old last gate. My house was the one in disrepair. A ton of things went on there. But that is for another day. With my parents out of town, my friends started staying over. My buddy and I decided to go get my girlfriend and head over to South Hill Ball Diamond. We walked through the cemetery and it was uneventful. We reached my girlfriend and the three of us headed back to the ballpark. South Hill Ball Complex and ex-girlfriend's house on the same 2-block area. It was around 10:30 p.m. when we got to the ballpark. We had a blast at the park. The park once had this huge swing situated in a dome shape. Makes for some awesome night swinging under the stars. After about an hour, a storm was rolling in from the southeast. We walked to my girlfriend to her house and headed back to my house. My buddy was complaining about going the long way because the storm was full of lightning and approaching fast. The wind was picking up greatly. He wanted to go back that way. He wanted to go the back way, which is the way we came and is the short route, which means you go through the park, go behind a large apartment building. This road is 3rd Street and the truck is next to the cemetery and the trees obscure the apartment building. As a note, the maps did not want to show the apartment. We also would likely go through the now closed and locked cemetery. When we got to the apartment building, my buddy suddenly stopped. He said, "I left my glasses at the park. Stay here and I'll run back and grab it." My buddy was a cross-country runner. I waited, pacing back and forth at the back corner of the apartment building, as my buddy was heading back and being loud and immature. I noticed a man walking up the front sidewalk to the apartment. He was wearing a Michael Myers mask and a dark blue coveralls, brandishing a machete on his side. And he paused, staring up at the top center apartment. I looked up at the apartment and saw through a window a college-aged female was walking back and forth. Then through another hallway window just outside of this gal's apartment, I saw the masked dude slamming on the female's apartment door. My buddy ran up and said, "What was that scream?" I only heard the mic clone banging and thundering in my own heartbeat. I pointed up. My buddy had seen the masked dude in the female's apartment. We could not see the female at that point. The masked man was looking down at us and the apartment light went out. We see the masked man go by the hallway window, leaving her apartment. We ran. It was now raining heavy with lightning and thunder. We hopped the back cemetery fence. A couple of times I looked to my right to see my buddy running alongside of me as we dodged headstones. Then he screamed. I looked back and at first did not see him. I slowed my pace in a panic as he jumped out of an open grave. He yelped like Goofy and his feet were running in midair. I was at least 100 yards ahead of him. I began to run in total panic. My buddy poured on the juice, passing me very quickly. He literally jumped over the graveyard gate across from the front of my house. It took me a bit longer. We made it into the house when we turned off the lights. With towels to dry ourselves, we spent a great deal of time peeking out the window between the curtains. Then it happened. A 70s S model station wagon pulled into my driveway and stopped. We were shitting ourselves. We could not make out the lone person situated in the driver's seat of the car. Just a silhouette. Suddenly it backed out and went out the way it came. We ran outside, staying low in my yard. It turned and went back to the apartment building. Michael Myers clone? Let's not meet.
I lived in a handful of different apartment communities with my mother for the majority of my teenage years. Some better than others, and incidentally this occurred in the best of all of them. I was 16 at the time, and there were a group of girls around 10 years old that liked to hang out and play volleyball together a lot. They hated me, because I used to go around with another kid and throw water balloons at them whilst they were playing. In hindsight, this was pretty creepy in itself, but at the time, it was hilarious. Well, I'd probably be the last person they would ever visit, but one day whilst I was playing GTA in the middle of summer, they came knocking at my door. I was going to make a smart-ass comment, but they looked pretty distressed, so I asked them what was wrong. They told me that there was a weird guy driving around near where they were hanging out, and wanted me to come by. I was the oldest kid in the complex, so it made sense that they would come for me. We went and got my buddy who was 14 at the time, and we went over there. Well, they were right. We got over there and there was this guy in an old truck, still there, watching us approach. I was pretty fearless, so I flipped him off and started throwing a football with my friend. The girls went back to playing volleyball, and this is where things get absolutely crazy. After around 10 minutes, the guy gets out and starts walking towards all of us. We decide to get the hell out of there, so we run back towards my place. He follows. I tell everyone to book it, and he starts running behind us. At this point I decide I'm gonna go get my mother's gun and scare this guy away. So he beat him back to my apartment and locked the door. I get the gun, unloaded, and go back outside to find that he's there waiting for us with a nasty look on his face. I look him dead in the eye and tell him to get the hell out of here and point the gun right at him. But he smiles, reaches into his belt and raises his own gun right back at me. It's at this point that I completely shit myself. I know I can't fire. I went completely numb just standing there, gun raised for what felt like years, when in hindsight it was probably no more than 15 seconds. Neither of us said a word. After that eternity, he finally lowered his gun and walked away. We called the cops after and omitted the part about my gun, but they never found the guy. I have not pulled the gun on anyone after that. I was the neighborhood badass forever after the encounter though, but absolutely did not want the designation. I didn't sleep for weeks. I can still clearly see the barrel of that dude's gun staring me down. I felt like the smallest dude in the world for those 15 seconds. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Mr. Davis for helping me out with these stories today, as well as the amazing subscribers for their submissions. Be sure to go over and check out his amazing channel. I know you will love his content just as much as I do. He's one of my favourite narrators to listen to. So go on, show him some love. He really deserves it. I suppose these stories just go to show you never truly know who to trust, and that even people you think you may be close to could have much darker motives behind the friendship. So please be cautious. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe, as you won't want to miss what I have in store for you next. Remember that you can submit your scary or paranormal story to my new official Reddit page, or send it over to my email, both of which you can find in the description. And feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter @TheMortisMedia for sneak peeks on what goes on behind the scenes. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.